This is we're recording all of the classes. And like I think this is football home. All right, let me see what you want.
Hey, I'm out of time this time.
Just you calm down with the power over here. I knew one. So where did you he doesn't use it.
It's verified 7 days a week here.
So I think what we do, we're actually this has nothing to do with that. It's probably a link is coming so you could look just on where we go to file system and search for that. So my guess is they probably made this course a couple of years ago. Some of the links have gone back. Yes, that's probably one. The other, yeah, and the other part is last year the year before, most people forced to switch to HTTP requiring you to have better security certificates. And so they very well be able to access it and join that. Just think of what you. I like the masks. Yeah, with this CH mods.
Ignore the
Water. So the numbers. What's the last three numbers?
Yep.
This is just on the verge of where I came up.
A little case. Sorry.
Get out.
That's fine. Trust me. Yes, yeah, I know. It was like Thomas watching. Yes, I wish I could read someone so I would.
I still got a couple minutes. I'll be right back.
Trust me. I almost like you want to show up.
I was over there, I didn't realize what time it was. I was trying to get my JSP driver updated to see if I can write. Minutes to a sit. You did?
Last night, I cracked my tire.
Is that done?
Pretty much. So I just had that.
Right then and there?
Yeah, pretty much. And Yeah, well, on the bed,
Yeah.
but it's good on gas inside.
It
Picks up
is,
fast.
it is. It's just because of the,
I Yeah. I probably
I would
do,
tear
but
your
really care.
like I literally.
I scrape it. Well, my oil pan was all like screws on the front of it.
Oh, really?
Yeah, the 2016 was a new car.
Oh.
I got 60. Well, not I got 63,000 miles on it.
Let's see if it's
I made it down after, the second you went to code,
Yeah, no difference.
the chat bot thing? Yeah, no, I don't know. I noticed them all around the Android.
But it is basically is.
Oh, I need something.
It's like the automated problems.
Okay. Oh, really?
Like 4 years.
Okay, so if you're a busy person.
Like my website.
I'm honest.
Dude, what is it? I want to have like you actually the writing.
it's hard to see. It's on its way, wait.
I know I was sitting here last week, so may as well get it to you now.
There's that, it'll pop up.
Right. This is for Model 3, right?
And I think
I do apologize.
Yeah, let's do that. All right, let's get started. Well, I guess we're already recording, so. Yay. So, welcome to using BrickLink in an advanced class. Oh wait, that's a good one. Anybody here ever use BrickLink? No. Do none of you love Legos?
I don't know about that, but
Yeah, Legos.
just about blockchain.
Well, what?
Blockchain.
Well, you know, Legos are made out of blocks, so, you know, there you go. You can make a chain out of it. I'm not a blockchain expert. I know the word. I know the definition basically, but that's about it. So if I can get your attention, I mean, you can also, if you choose, the screens are out today. I'm hoping they'll be back on Thursday, but they've been trying to upgrade them to run off of the network rather than off of their HDMI splitter. And they've taken the HDMI splitter off, but the IP-based casting isn't working yet. So hey, we have blank screens. However, what I'm doing will be on the Zoom channel. So if you want to log into the Zoom channel, then you can watch it there, but mute your audio and don't bother with your video. Just, use it more as a local watching for the screen. The session is.
Is there a app for it on Google Play? Zoom?
If you just type in zoom.com, I think it takes you to it. Or search for Zoom conferencing. It's free. But who's got the meeting number? Something. Okay. You're messing it, Brian.
Oh wait, how do I?
So 763. 763 269 and 192.
So do I click join?
Yeah, I would use join
Okay.
and then put in the meeting ID number,
Which is that number you just wrote?
the number I just wrote up there.
Space is required?
No,
Okay.
there's actually dashes in it, but it doesn't let you put dashes in either.
All right, give me a
I had it
minute.
on my calendar.
Wait, what was this?
Zoom.
If you want to, because the screens are out today, if you want to watch what I'm doing, probably the best way is to just log into the Zoom conference, and you'll see what I'm doing on my laptop. We don't even have projectors in here, or I'd fire a projector up. Look at everybody. Wow, still got it. I should have. I have a bunch of fears showing you your face. I know. Should be sharing my desktop.
My profile pictures are.
There we go.
Shoot, I just lost you. What did I do? How do I put you?
All right, you should see a screen that's got a terminal window right in the middle of it.
I'm on a computer.
How do I do this?
I got it. I want this
So
one.
how do you look it up by number?
That's my desktop, that's the.
Gotcha.
On Zoom?
Yeah.
Let's see what that is.
So meeting is,
They'll say join in the ID number. That's it.
What meets?
Anybody see my desktop yet?
join meeting.
My meeting?
I'm trying.
I don't know. Oh, you're eating.
That was me, I guess.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Why do I keep losing the host?
How much you ever do with a student called the trying analytics?
Always was trouble, still is.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, come on. There it is, okay. All right,
This
so
one.
you should see the screen that you see up in the corner.
Yeah.
Got it?
In there.
I'll do attendance while you're putter with that. It's the Amanda N.
The Amanda?
The Amanda, I believe she is.
This one or the other one?
We have two.
I was the only Amanda.
Did you just
Story of
me?
my life.
You did not me.
Well, we have
I
two
don't
Amandas.
know anyone, because I've been called Amanda my whole life.
How do you set a profile picture?
I don't know. You go to settings and manage my account.
Oh, no.
Oops. All right, Devin is here, right?
Should I put on my webcam?
No. I mean, let's not tie up 20 people on video when we can look at each other.
Apparently there's no internet.
Yeah, I can't get on the
Apparently there's no bandwidth left for me. Yeah, I'm kicked out.
It keeps disconnecting.
Same.
Yep.
You can all just crowd around your laptop.
I'm upset.
It's in their Galaxy S8.
Get off your phone.
This is Amanda.
Never.
All right, Gage?
No.
Oh my God. Oh, fuck.
Oh my God. I'm so sorry.
Give it every way.
Okay.
Mute yourselves, everyone.
Oh, boy.
You're the only one not muted.
Aaron? Weston? Weston is here. JT is here, I think, right? JT in the back?
Maybe.
Right. Matthew is here. Noah. Isaiah. Zarvi.
Here.
Brian.
Here.
Brian.
You here?
Brian.
Here. Yeah, I'm gonna go home.
Tyler Sutherland. Tyler.
So now I'm connected. What?
Calvin.
Yeah.
Calvin's here.
I don't know if everybody watching the same stream is the best for the bandwidth. Right?
Yeah, I know.
It's under.
Like watching an hour
Billy's here.
presentation.
Christopher.
I'm here, unfortunately.
Well, yeah.
Franklin. So the only one, Tyler Sutherland. Tyler Sutherland, not here. Who is, just raise your hand. Who's online and can see? Every time it bumps, I lose the share.
The Wi-Fi is really bad.
So you should be.
I'm just trying to find out what
That's not me.
Devin, why do I have my picture on your? Thank you.
Sorry.
Thank you. Hey, Kelvin.
Yeah.
On the far wall, on the floor in my office is a Pelican case, about this big. It's got a projector in it. I'll bring that out.
I'll do it. Yeah, sure.
It's
I can't even get on Reddit.
There you go.
Well,
That's a huge problem. I can't get on Reddit.
Of course, now that I'm looking at this here,
I think that would.
to see if that projector takes it, what used to your mind. I just need to bring my own. Yeah. That's the one. See if this thing will let it.
Can't fit in with
Yeah, I know. It would be funny if it was, but it's not, you know.
Wait, why would it be funny?
That's what my ear is.
I'm on the
Oh, great. No. PGA only.
Oh, no.
Oh, my connection, my internet connection is unstable.
I think
Yeah, it's bad.
they don't have to be
Same.
on.
But for me,
Well, and they got rid of that giant monitor that we had there. That was suitable too. Well, so
Oops, I got kicked off.
how about if you, a couple of you share screens with people nearby? I don't know what else to do. I can put it on this large screen as well.
There's no builder in here.
No.
That's it.
No, that's a building.
No, it's not. You don't even know it. I was waiting 10 minutes from trying to clean it. Well, the builder.
All right,
Got giggles in the back.
folks, chill, just chill. Turn the age level up just a little. Well, 18-year-old, before you do the 2-year-olds. All right. Let's see how long it can stay up there, but I'm not counting on it. I may have to just write stuff, and you can try it on your local laptops.
Is there anything in your screen? Yeah.
Needs it now?
Yeah.
It does, but every time it bumps, then it goes back to the default. So as long as it doesn't bump, that's what we're gonna see. So I'm gonna go through a bunch of the stuff that has been covered, and then we'll see how far forward we can move. So last week, you folks were trying to get your Linux installed on a computer. You've all done that, I know.
We're booting from USB, it's okay, right?
That's fine.
As long as we can play with it.
Yep, you can, what's that called?
I can't remember. Booting from USB.
Live boot.
It's a live boot, which means that you can literally just run it off that.
Should we be in Linux right now?
Well,
Or no, because we're using our screen to see.
it depends on what we're doing. And if this fails horribly, which it has been, then we can do that. But you should either be in Linux so that you can try the things that we're talking about, or you should be in GoToMeeting so you can see my screen. Those are your two options. Just a quick review.
Will this be uploaded on YouTube later?
As long as it's not too embarrassing.
Okay.
Which at the rate it's going, it might be. I don't know.
Feel great.
Quick reminder. So in Linux, we have three things going on pretty much all the time. We've got terminals. And these are what you interface with. They could be the terminal thing that pops up, but they can also be other applications that are using the equivalent of a terminal interface to talk with the Linux operating system. All of these terminals run through what they call a shell. There's a shell for each terminal. There's no limit to the number of shells you can have running in a Linux environment. Could be 1,000, could be 5,000, whatever. Some of the largest servers will be running lots and lots of shells, lots of terminals all at the same time. And so you've got terminal to shell, terminal to shell. And then
the terminal doesn't have to be a physical thing. The terminal is actually just what you're working on.
Yes. So if you're running Linux and you open a terminal window, you are already running terminals in a graphical user environment. You just opened a new one that gave you a direct to the command line terminal window. And what do these all tie into? What's that called?
Root, I don't know.
Root would be correct in the file structure, but in the
Okay. Yeah.
good job, Brian.
Top of the class right there.
Yeah, yeah.
Right at that.
-5 for the tentativeness, but
What are we talking about? It's only 30 minutes late.
So the entire Linux operating system operates on these three things. Terminals, each terminal having a shell. The shell is basically the environment where it interfaces between what the programs in you are trying to do and the kernel, which runs everything on the hardware side, the operating system, the CPU, the memory management, and everything else. So I just wanted to make sure we looked at that. We're going to go through a lot of things in the command line interface of what you can do. If you see this or this on the command line, what are the differences between those two? Amanda.
Administrator is the hashtag and user is the $.
Right. But do they call this the admin?
No, they call it the root user,
Right. So this is the root.
not to be confused with the root.
Right. And this would be your regular user.
And you
So,
never want to be working in the hashtag one unless you're only doing admin.
because you could do
Mess
nasty
stuff up.
things. If you were a administrator, root user in a Linux system, and somebody called you over for help, and you needed to escalate what you could do because it was sitting here at a regular user interface, you would go to switch user to root, SU space root, which would put you up to where you need to be. Yes.
So like, on a network of Linux computers, so a regular user can't just become a root user by asking for permission. The root user has to give permission to regular users. Right?
Well, like I'm Tom, the regular user sitting here. If I know the password to become a root user, then I could become a root user.
Okay.
So one person could be both.
Yeah.
Or if the admin comes, get out of the way, Tom, sit down, and just quickly change the login on that. And what's going to happen is it'll switch from this to this. There will be a password requirement. If I am a regular user who has root user permissions, and I switch user to the super user, the SU root, and it recognizes that I have those, it won't ask me for a second password. But if I'm a regular user who doesn't have permission, then it's going to say, hey, that's nice of you, Kelvin. Sure, you want to hop on here, but what's the password? If you don't know the password, you're not getting in. It's going to say, ha, 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 ha. You can probably write a routine for that. Ha, 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 ha. You know, kind of like Jurassic Park, right?
Yeah, no.
You'd have to have seen the movie. How many of you have seen Jurassic Park?
Yeah, all of it though.
See, you remember who Nedry is, right? Nedry is the, Newman from well, see now, half the class doesn't have any
Know
idea
what
who
Newman is? I
Newman
know
is
who
either.
he is.
I've seen the ones with Chris Pratt.
So anyway, so there's that to keep in mind. Last review,
If we have questions on the homework, which are very simple, I have a couple questions on the homework. I just didn't know how to specify looking for, like it said, I mean, I knew how to do the list and I knew how to like go down through the list, but I couldn't understand how to get it to be like just A's or just the 3 characters or that. I missed the command to do that.
okay, we'll go through some of those.
Okay, all right.
And I don't keep these things memorized. So they have,
At least you know at some point.
well, you know, the fact is that most of the stuff has not changed in 40 years.
Right.
But if you don't use it, you lose it. And you don't want to wing it. What do you mean? You just deleted the entire city of Cleveland? So
That's fine.
a lot of folks will have cheat sheets right next to their computer. Why? Because there's 1,000 things you can do that require proper syntax. It's got to be, you know, ls space hyphen capital L space, you know, this dash, you know, hyphen, you know, I mean, you've got to have a syntax that it goes with. And I do not use Linux often enough at that level to remember it. But it looks exactly like it did the last time I was on a Solaris system. Uses virtually the exact same thing. The old Sun Microsystems. Unix, the same things. So, which ones do we want to talk about? I'm going to go into the what they call the meta characters, which is what Amanda's talking about, where you can put in a number of variables that allow you to change what it is you're trying to do. And I think without doing it in context, I'm going to leave that be. We talked a little bit about man pages. It's not man pages, it's like a man cave. The manual pages that give you information about a particular thing. Man and info are almost identical, they really are. One started with Linux, one started with Unix, and they virtually are identical. So if you can use either man or info space and the file and the command. should give you the information you want. But what a lot of people don't realize is that there's 10 layers in every manual, although some of those sections may be empty. You know, if for whatever reason you're doing a command that's tied up with games, that's section 6. You know, and so you can look at the, you know, man, space, and then the section you want, 6 would be for games, and then a command line, you know, who am I? It probably come up empty, but, you know, it would be looking directly in section 6, which relates to games. Section,
Let's see.
section 1 would be just the things that you can put beyond on the other end of who am I, the stuff that goes out here, the command line extensions, like, you know, ls space and then hyphen whatever.
Okay.
So if I go in here, oops, let me get out of this.
The author for this is Richard Martineric.
Let me start a new terminal here. Give me a second. Thank you. Start a terminal, share the terminal. There we go. Okay, so you all see the terminal up there. If I did a man space list, and it's going to give me all of the stuff that would go with that. And there's a lot to it. Okay, there's 237 lines in that particular one. And you can do quit to get out of it. If I did man ls, man 5, 6 ls, it's empty. So there's no entry for games under this. Why? Because you know, it's the list feature isn't really designed for use with games. You do man.
Where'd you get the 6 to know that's games?
It's actually in your reading.
Okay.
But let me see if we can. So how about man? So there they are right there. So if I go under the manual, for the manual, you'll see that there's 9 sections listed there. 6 is games, 7 is miscellaneous, macro pack, you know, other stuff, system administration commands. It can only work when you're in root. 1 is the one that you're going to use the most, which is why it's at the beginning when you pop it up. That's going to be those things that you would add, you know, to your common use of that command man. Same as it would be for list or directory or, you know, whatever, make directory, any of the ones commands that you want. All of these, it should be Q to get out or H for help. I'm just going to hit Q. So we can do man mk direct. And again, we've got everything you might need to know for making a directory. Luckily, everything is only 55 lines. So that one's not too big. And this front page where it says description, this is pretty much what you call that section 1. And this is where you can do make directory -m for the mode, -p for parents, v for verbose, z for set Linux security context. Again, this is for directories. So, and then help. Questions about that? And if we did,
I just don't.
sorry, what?
I just don't really get where it's all going together.
Okay.
Like, that's neat, it's great. I can run up, look up a manual and see make directory, but like, I don't even get what make directory is.
Okay, well that's, so if we do ls, those are the directories that exist right now.
Okay.
And let's say we wanted to make make directory music 2. So we're going to make a new directory. Oops, sorry. Make directory music 2. And I do list again. See, now there's a new folder there. Ah.
And you need to try.
It just got back
Oh,
up.
there we go.
It just got back up.
Wow, magic!
There we go.
Okay. So basically,
Okay.
what you're seeing there is that, so I'm a novice. I don't know how to use make directory. I don't remember the syntax for using make directory. I know, the homework or the book said use make directory. Which one do I use? So,
Get rid of it.
well, so that would be,
So hold on though, before we go away from this.
yes.
So you just made that directory. How do we get into that directory? Do we just do the slash and then music 2? Okay, that. And this is called,
Change directory. CD is change directory.
right, but one of them was called, there was 2 different kinds, like passive and. Yeah, that's what it was, yeah.
That was an application.
I'm not sure.
Yeah, but navigating between them, one of them has slash, one of them didn't, so I wanted to understand why you choose one and not the other depending.
I'm not sure I understand the question.
You're talking about, absolute and path name.
Yeah.
What's the difference between, because she said that she had to use the slash one.
Well, path absolutes the slash, right, and path names without it.
Okay, so,
So why does it matter?
well, we're working right now with a very small system.
Okay.
It's got a few directories, most of the directories are empty.
Okay.
What if we're in a company directory that's been in use for 5 years, it's got 100 users on it, and each user's got 1,000 files. This is real. I mean, our file server that we use up in Orono probably has 20,000 files on it. Find it, And so all of a sudden it becomes important to not only be able to search for things, but to be able to work, not always, I need to switch to this particular directory, and I could go change directory, ... change directory, ... change directory, ... all the way back. Okay, now let's go forward, change directory to pictures 3, change directory to pictures, October, change directory to pictures, dogs.
So that's
something.
when slash comes in, because you can just jump there.
Right, so I could do, so if I do lists, it's going to default to the directory I'm in, which is musics 2. And so there is nothing in there. I can list root, I'm just going to do, so there's the root, and if I want to change, let's see, root, home, and there's, so the slash brings me back to the root directory. That's before any of the users. Then if I go to /home, it takes me back to the home directory of the current user, which is T. Bickford. And then I can then go to /home /T. Bickford, except it's spelled wrong. Offered. I'm trying to remember what comes next. Shoot, give me a second. So,
Can you clear so you can go to the top? So why are you putting the $sign on?
the $sign just tells me I am.
Oh, that came that way, I see it now.
Right, that tells me I'm a regular user. I'm not operating currently as a super
Just
user.
in the home, that's what that.
Right. Yep. And so if I go all the way back to T. Bickford, or to the home, T. Bickford in this case is the only user on this computer in the Linux operating system. If I go into T Pickford, then it shows me the desktop, documents, downloads, music, music 2, whatever. Here's a really cool feature you can also do. I don't remember the text. Okay. What if I want to save the directory I'm working in, but I want it to be able to edit it and look at it? I can do list. And now if you look, what I just did, and I'll open it up in a second, I just created a new file because when I use this symbol in a command line structure, it's telling me where I want to output that to. So rather than output it to the screen, if I do an ls list command, it puts it on the screen, doesn't it? Well, I can tell it to put it to a file instead. And I could have named that file anything I wanted to.
And what's LRT?
It's actually 3 different variables all stuck together, and I can look them up too. So let's go to
Oh, you can stick variables together?
and one.
Seriously? Okay. Well, that would explain a little bit.
It wasn't nearly as bad as coding.
To be honest, I like making the web pages way better.
So the L was use a listing format.
A lot easier.
I should know that. L is a listing format. I'll show you what that is in a second. Is that mine ringing in the other room? Or?
I think so.
Yeah.
It sounds like it.
R is to do it in reverse order so that it shows the, and we'll see that in a second, LRT, right? And T.
What's the recursive? I don't get that.
If you're in a file structure and you want to see all the files, not just the one at the upper levels. So let's say documents had 10 files in it.
Yeah.
If I say list the directory that had documents in it, I'm just going to see documents.
Oh, okay.
If I use recursive, I will see all 10 files that are in that folder as well.
Right, it goes back to the.
And so let's just go look at
And T sorts by time, right?
and T sorts by modification. Now, how you do two, they're doing it both R and T, and one is recursive. Well, so it's going to be doing it recursively by time. Yeah, I don't know.
Recursive or reverse order? You're
Yeah, sorry,
confusing me on
reverse
what the
order.
R meant.
Well, it depends on whether it's a little r or a
Little R,
capital
big
R.
R.
Okay, so that's reverse order.
So let me get out of this. Q, clear, this, and I'm going to do VI, which is an editor, is output to .log, and that's what I just got. So that -L, which told me to give it to me in a complete listing format, shows me a lot more information. Wait a second, point to it up. The D at the very beginning stands for directory. So that item is a directory. Well, that makes sense, right? Because videos was a directory, templates, public, music downloads, etc. The only two that are not are those two output files I've made, is output and is output to.log. And those have a blank first character, which means they're not a directory, they're not an executable, they're not a bin, they're identified as just an other file. Doesn't have a character for text files. Then it talks about what are the read-write permissions, read-write and executables between them all, who's the user, who made it, what's the size allocated for it. So there's 4 megabytes, I think, set aside for each of those. I'd have to go look to see if it's megabytes. Pretty sure it is. What date was it created and what's its name? So if we went out of here, Come on, Q.
Where did you see the 4 megabytes?
Well, see the 4096?
Okay.
That's megabytes. Yeah, I, that's what it is. So all right. I'm just trying to remember how to quit out of this.
Otherwise,
Is it that ::WQ?
Command line, Q.
4096.
There we go. Exit.
Did it work?
Yes. So, you know the ls command, which gives us this? I do an ls-l. It's the same list, but it gives me a lot more information. If you've used Windows, you know how you can do a list and you can do a detail in the file list? This is the same thing, except it looks a little different because Linux just does it a little different than Windows does. But if you want to know more about the files in a Windows environment, then you use listed by detail, not by name. And you'll get file size, date, owner, all of that stuff's available in Windows as well. But Windows has dumbed it down to the point where it's just the names unless you select it otherwise. And they also let you have little pictures of it and all that kind of stuff in the file manager. Okay, so we can also do list-r. Actually, I'm going to do LR. And you'll notice if you look at it here, then all of the file names are done in reverse order from D all the way down to desktop, DE. So they've done it alphabetically in reverse order. If I did it LS-LT, then it's going to go based on the date and time. And so the newest stuff is at the top and the older stuff is at the bottom. Pretty sure if you did a LS-LT, no, sorry, wrong one. There's a way to reverse order it from oldest to newest. I just don't remember what it is.
Oh, will you clear, because when you get down in those last couple lines, it covers it.
It's, I think it's LS-LT.
Oops.
Newest, oldest.
if you do ls apostrophe, it breaks the terminal.
LS dash what? Well, LT, that gives us it.
Should give it to you, oldest to newest. I mean, newest, oldest.
Okay. I just reshared it, but I'm not seeing it. There it goes. Okay. I can also do, let me clear it. I can do an ls-f to show file names or file types. And you'll see that the white backslash just means it's a directory. It doesn't tell you the logs because it's one of the unrecognizable. If I had a bin file in here, executable, it would give it an asterisk, you know, and if it, I forget what the other, I've never found it to be useful, so I don't really use it. I'd rather see the extension names, which they don't, they give it to you, as you can see in the .log. What else can we do with that? We can do an ls-C to give it to us in the column format, or we can do an ls- where's the list? So that's the same directory, but the list just showed a lot more files. And the reason for that, so ls-a capital F, what that does is it shows all files. All of those that have the period at the beginning of the file name are hidden files. So they're not usually available for you to see. And the whole purpose is to, hey, let's take the stuff away from where you can muck with it. Windows, anybody see this in Windows before as well? Because it's there. If you go into the file directory and settings, show hidden files is one of the options. And it prevents you from accidentally deleting, modifying, or renaming things that Windows, or in this case, Linux, needs to operate. Questions about that?
Rename system 32. Rename it to system 30.
Okay, so how do I look for, like, specifics, like it asks for in the homework? Something with an A, something with
Yeah.
a 3-letter.
Yeah, we can do that. If I can get this thing to connect back in again.
I used the search thing and manually.
Yep.
And couldn't find anything.
For what?
Copy.
Copy.
Yeah, that was one of the questions required you to search the manual pages for everything with copy.
Right.
Write it down, but I couldn't find
Yeah.
it.
All right, well, so let's go back. So there's two different questions, Amanda, that you could ask.
Okay,
One is, are you looking for a particular thing in a file directory, or are you looking for it inside a file
it
itself?
was in bin. That's what the question asked.
So if we went to change directory, and so you'll see there's a lot of,
So what did you just type in, change directory or what? Bin?
slash bin.
Where you went, okay.
Come on, you can do it. You can do it.
ls/bin, I think is what it was.
No, well, so if you just want to go to the bin, you do /bin. Once you're there, then you do an ls.
/bin just tells you what's a directory.
Keeps dropping me out, dropping me in, dropping me out, dropping me in. I'm trying to remember if I have a. Oh, there it is. So that's, if I do a ls, in this, oops. Oh, great. Now I can't even do that. I'm gonna reopen the terminal. All right, so there. Change directory, bin, list. So we've got a lot of stuff in there. Now, let's say we're going to look for the one that has the word read in it. I just need to, I need something. So what we're going to do is we can do ls.
Can you be clear?
So I want to list any files that have read in it.
Okay, what is that? See, I copied that thing, okay. Wait, how'd you just do that?
Well, do which one? So, LS,
So that's what I did, I put the A in there.
Yep.
And then it just listed everything.
I'm gonna just do a LS. I'm gonna look for, actually, you know what, I'm gonna. I'm going to a place that I've got here, so LS.
Right. The question is, what things in bin had an A in them? Started with an A.
Yeah, I know. I'm just trying to remember who remembers the syntax for searching within the file here.
Well, there's a search bar thing up top there.
Oh, yeah. I know you. But you can also do it. So there's the only place found holes right there. Well, one of the places. And I apologize, I should know how to do this, but without having to go to the search bar up here. So search, find A. The list is so long.
That is the other one.
Give me a second. Running down, right? Search and Linux. So, I know I'm just missing something on the.
I can figure it out.
Is it strings? I don't know. I'm just looking at my scribbles.
Right. Also, you could use the locate. Also, use the find command. What I was looking for. I'm using all my electrons here.
I have 40 years of computer experience.
I know.
Our electrons do.
Well, I see I've dropped off the Zoom again, so.
Perfect.
every time I go to do something, the windows pop around because it keeps trying to connect to I get about 3 seconds on the search engine, and then it pops up with the Zoom feature. Let's see. All right, well, I'm going to give it up. I'll have to look that one up.
All right, so it's not that crazy that I couldn't find how to figure out how to do that. Find just days, find just 3 letters and things, or find exact thing with 3 letters ending with a T or an H.
Right.
Yeah. Okay. Cool. Just 10 by 10 keyboard.
Yeah, I will. Oops. I went back to that anyway, did it? Okay, so back up there. I wanted to spend, I mean, so there's two things going on. One is the proper syntax of what they call wildcards, which is what you want to use when you're doing the searches, Amanda.
Okay.
And then you should be able to use the ls and a find, a find command together.
Yeah.
It's escaping me at the moment how to do that.
Okay.
You can use the search feature at the top, but the search feature doesn't give you the first, what you want to be able to do is search for files that start with an A, not that have an A.
Yes.
And you do that with a particular syntax of wildcards, which is what I'm not, coming up with.
Okay, because that was what I looked for too, the wildcard, meta wildcard.
Yep.
Meta character, is that what it was? I couldn't I Googled, I read the book, and dang, I know everything was
So you can edit and you can look at and you can output text files directly from the terminal. And so like VI is it's what's called VI editor is one way. And if you do VI manual or even go online, there's a whole series of commands. And in VI, you have 2 modes. You have edit mode and command mode. And so you can't edit while you're in command mode, and you can't do commands while you're in edit mode. And so there's about a dozen character key combinations that will let you do editing, and about a dozen that will let you do commands. Commands might include things like insert a line, go to the end of a line, and then edit will let you actually edit what you're going to put in there. So if you wanted to add a line to a particular file, then you would go in there, go to where you want it to be, insert a new blank line, switch to edit mode, type in the line that you want, exit out of edit mode, and this is why we also use graphical user interfaces, because there's nothing really easy about it. The nice thing is if you only need to make 1 or 2 small changes, you do it fairly easy in VI. So what I just used to look at a file without editing it was cat, which is the concatenate option, which is cat and then the file name. But I can also do cat, well, in this case, cat -5 dash is output 2.log, and it's only going to
And what do you do on this command?
well, it's just trying to show you a particular line, which should have been -5 in the middle of it, but didn't want to do it. Try to attach. Nope. All right. No. Nope. Cat. And 1 cat. So show all. Yeah. So. Okay. So mine's empty. I got you. All right. Shit, what's the name of the file? I got that one right. So if you've got a text file, some of the things you can do with it, you can show the entire text file. You can show it 1 page at a time using the more command. You can show the top of the file, you can show the bottom of the file, you can show the file in reverse order. And in the reverse order, you can show the top and the bottom lines. If your job was to go and look at the, switch number 39B7 that you're going to remotely log into on your terminal, and you want to look at the last 10 things that showed up on the log, the system log for that device, because people are reporting they're having problems with it, well, that log file is going to grow and grow and grow with every failure, every restart, every whatever. So one of the things you can do is just show me the bottom of the list. And you can do that on the terminal, rather than trying to open it up into a different program and then scroll all the way to the bottom. You can just tell it, show it to me in reverse order, but only show me the top 10 lines, which would actually be the bottom 10 lines.
And how would that look in that command right there?
So you do, actually that's a good question. So, well.
And that's a problem, is it's saying we can go this, but I don't understand what to do with it.
Well, so the cat file is the one that's going to go in the normal correct forward look like that. So the top one's videos all the way down to LS output. And it is actually being put out there based on the date and the time. So that's why videos is above pictures. If we did TAC LS output, see now I wish I made it easier to name, but now it's just in the reverse order. And we can do,
And this isn't telling us this is just telling us what's been happening. I'm kind of confused.
I get it, cat and tag.
yes,
Right.
That's cute.
yeah, that's why they did it.
I'll face comment.
No, but actually that's also, so again, let's imagine that we're looking at a log file for a piece of equipment that's running your local network or your server that you're, and trust me, if it's the server that's running Bangor Savings Bank's teller machines, you don't just sit down and pop up and look at, and open up a GUI and start bopping around in there and play solitaire and stuff. It's a very dedicated machine. What you do is you connect to it and look at the log files and look at its status reports so that you can see what's going on. That way you have a minimal impact on a crucial piece of machinery. And so one of the things you might do is that it's been set up to show you fault logs. The log, every single time that machine throws an error code, it's going to write it to the log file.
And it's always called LS output log?
Well, no, that's just a file I made.
Okay.
So that, I don't know if you remember it, but I yes, Kelvin? Yes.
Why isn't my mouse button?
Sorry,
Why is it?
that was pretty
I do not know why. But to go back to the question of, we made that file, Amanda, just by having the list write to a file.
Okay.
So, I mean, I literally did LS, LRT, right? And then I used the double arrow to send it to a file, and then I could have called it test.log, which would have been a lot easier. And now when I go in here, there's a new file. It's called test.log.
And then when you're doing that cat or pack, or cat or pack, that's just telling us what happened in that.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's just an example. It's not really a log. It's just showing me the list of files.
Okay.
So
So how about list everything when you're just asking for test log?
this is everything that I just wrote to text log.
Oh, okay, that was the list that went into it.
Right, so if I go over here to home and go to test log, there it is. So, oops, sorry. Yeah, there it is. Just sign me out again. Well, I know what I'm doing tomorrow. Beat my head against the table. Okay, I mean, you're all in computers. Everybody know what this term means?
No,
Well, look it up.
I would, but my mouse isn't.
Oh, no.
What this button?
Kludge. You have to pronounce
Is
it
that
right.
an L or like the long? Like,
No, that's an L.
okay.
L sorted with parts of some.
Yeah, kind of like using the Zoom system over there, along with the system next to it to put it up on the monitors in my laptop so I can run Linux and, and it's like, oh, man, it's a glitch.
And now I can't turn it off.
What can't you turn on?
My computer.
Oh, so if you ever totally mash up a computer and you need to turn it off, you push the on-off button and hold it for 10 seconds and it will force a reboot.
So cruise is what you use to describe Apple software.
I wouldn't go that far. I try not to talk about Apple software.
So this is a nice way of saying cluster B.
Well, it's just, in an ideal world, I'd be sitting at one computer here that would be tied in with the Zoom system. It would be outputting to these, and it would let me do what I need to do.
But instead it's a
It is. And
it's kludge, so that's a great way to say that without guessing. It's my most useful thing I've learned.
let me go try one more thing because this already driven me nuts.
You should just upload this knowledge to a brain.
Yeah, all you do is USB.
Really?
Pick up your nose.
LS brain.
Antibody.
I'm back.
I should have said anything now, I'm discard.
Anybody logged into this?
No.
What?
Or did it?
Into what?
I'm just trying to see.
I'm logged. Are we talking about into the Zoom?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm in it.
Okay.
New version of virtual.
You were nobody.
I can't remember if this one's been set up.
I couldn't get my virtual box to work. What?
All right, so what I'm going to try to do to make it a little simpler is not use the laptop, take one piece out of it, and go into the host machine. It's Fedora instead of.
So Tom,
Yes.
so you're running Linux Fedora, but it's running, I think, scripts to work with VirtualBox. So does it understand that it's in a virtual environment? And how does it act differently if it understands that?
Okay, so I have questions kind of about that too. All right, hold on.
Yeah, it doesn't ask different.
Yeah, how does it know? How does it know?
Okay, so
It really does know.
here's my turn. Okay. All right, so the question is, what is this whole VirtualBox, or Hyper-V or what have you?
Okay.
Well, but you want to know whether or not VirtualBox
Yeah.
knows that it's running.
No, well, so you ran your instance or whatever in VirtualBox, right, with Linux. And Linux started running the different scripts and stuff.
Sure.
It was talking about VMware, whatever. So Linux knows that it's in VirtualBox as a virtual instance. How does all that work? Like, does it act differently? Does it know that its memory is limited? Does it know?
No, so I mean, the whole concept behind virtual, whether it's in VirtualBox or any of the virtual hosting software, is you have to have the home operating system has to operate something that allows it to build that virtual environment. Whether it's VirtualBox or Hyper-V, doesn't matter.
Right.
VMware or whatever. So, my assumption is, but that host software, VirtualBox, negotiates with the main operating system to allocate resources that are segregated, unless you know, are you gone? That are segregated from the resources from the rest of the operating system. So it basically is setting up a certain amount of RAM, a certain amount of processor nodes, and space on the hard drive, and saying, that's yours, and we're going to keep you completely separate. And before virtualware, you couldn't have done this. Right. Although in Linux does, it's almost like it's doing that for each instance of a terminal and a shell.
Right.
Not quite, but you know, and so with virtualware, you're actually running two kernels for the first time.
Oh.
Because you're running a Windows kernel and you're running a Linux kernel. Right. And it's only able to do that because you have to give it at least one node of the processors so that it can be run totally separate from the others.
Okay.
So that the guy juggling the chainsaws, you know, where I could just see it, you know, chainsaws in one hand and raw eggs in the other. Good luck, right? But I mean, that's the theory. But yes, JT.
I'm kind of hoping to try to get an external hard drive for the virtual thing for the class, like so that way I could use the external hard drive for Linux. Am I able to keep the VirtualBox program inside the external hardware and use that external hardware for all that?
Okay, so there's two things you're asking about. One is yes and two is no. You can't install, well, I mean, if you add an external hard drive, it's just another hard drive on your machine. If you have it plugged in, you should be able to run anything that's on there as if you had another hard drive in your box.
So technically, like if I put the VirtualBox on the external hard drive on my home computer, I can't can't use the external hard drive on one of these.
Well, I don't know. I've never tried to take, when you set up the VirtualBox and it sets itself up to use the mama operating system that's on the system, I don't know if that's going to be sufficiently different from the next machine that you try to plug it into. Just don't know. On the other hand, your other option is to just boot live to Linux, but then you only have a single operating system. The whole purpose behind the virtual operating system is you can have both on at the same time and be able to flip back and forth.
Okay, so.
He's already got the answer.
No, no. I'm running through something called a Shroot, which is CHROOT.
Yep.
And it's been, I'm going to use the description that they use here. Like virtualization, Shroots provide the guest OS with their own segregated file system to run in, allowing applications to run in a different binary environment from the host OS. Unlike virtualization, you are not booting a second OS. Instead, the guest OS is running using the Chromium OS system. The benefit is to this is that there is zero speed penalty. So I guess what my question would be is, since I'm not technically running through a virtual machine and I'm running through the Chromium OS system, am I going to get, am I confined by what the Chromium OS system is capable of on Linux, or is this Linux? I guess I'm confused.
So my understanding is that Google Linux Chrome OS. So the hardware in there so the software is not using the full capability of the hardware. I would assume that because the way it's worded, Linux is running within Chrome OS, that you would be limited to what Google limits Chrome OS to for hardware.
Yeah, okay.
That's what I think, because I think, yeah.
What I understood from what I researched this weekend, and I was is that the Chrome is only set up to accept so much. So like it said like HP, Lenovo, and Dell are also doing that can, are almost they're designed, they are designed so they can run Windows or Linux, but the Chrome is very specific.
Yeah, like I have to run like the most
Created.
discount version of Linux ever.
Yeah, and it said that like
So-
the way that there's like their proprietary means basically that they want that to not be able to do anything but Google Chrome. Sets it up so that the hard drive and the internal stuff in there isn't.
Well, I don't know about that
like
because Chrome literally has a link to run Linux on their devices. Like Chrome actually has links to it.
Did it allow it to do it
Yeah, Google advertises the fact that you can run Linux on it.
now or that?
Just period. Like Chrome, if you have a Chromebook, there's a spot in there that says Linux on a Chromebook. And
Okay.
it walks you through.
I
But
think technically Chrome OS has a Linux kernel anyway.
It does.
I'm pretty sure.
so then I guess there wouldn't be too much.
So, I might just say.
You can always go and, I've tried a couple of years, we've been trying to find a good performance tester. We have ones we use in the Windows environment that work really nice. They'll go through a whole suite of tests for, how to, CPU, your GPU, RAM access, and read writing to the hard disk, and run through a whole series of everything, all the DirectX versions that are likely to be run across, and it evaluates how it's running under its current configuration. But then we've never found an identical, close to identical one to run under Linux, so you can do an apples to apples comparison.
Yeah. On the bright side, though, I got touchscreen Linux. That works.
Well, there you go.
Right.
Yeah. All right. So where did we leave off? We had the terminal open. There it is. Can you see that? Can you see it now? All right. I want to see if there's anything else. Now you can, so let's well, let me make a file again just so I can do it. List LRT, right? I'll just call it. So there it is. And if I want to look at test.txt, there's everything that's in that folder. If I want to search in that, I can use the grep command. And I just tell it what I want to search for. So let's just say templates. And I want to search in this. So there's the one place that it found it inside that file. If it's a big file, then that would come in handy again. Maybe you're on a log file that's got 4,000 lines of entry in a log file, and you want to find out when Brian logged into the server last, or how many times has Brian logged into that server, over, the course of the last 30 days.
How much malware is Brian installed on the server?
Yeah, pretty
On
much.
purpose?
We could search for something that's a little,
We can maximize it.
I tried, but all it does is that.
Brian, that doesn't do anything.
Yeah. So,
Perfect.
if we, let's just,
Yeah, I mean, you're not gonna get any more feedback.
How's a 1 foot bezel tree?
so I'm trying to find something that makes it really simple. Grab P, capital P, and that's done. So it's going to find it twice there under public and pictures. So you can use the grep command, which is a global regular expression search feature. What else we got? You can use it's kind of a hard example because I don't have enough names, file name information. Hold on. We'll do it the other way. We'll go back to activities. Folder. And I'm just going to create what do you call the editor in LibreOffice?
Libra or Libre?
And I just,
There you go.
I also opened the wrong one anyway. So.
That's kind of literally all the different windows open.
Yeah.
So weird to see a Linux UI.
I know, yeah, it's exciting, isn't it? All right, come on.
This is one virtual.
Yeah, which is why I don't do it. I can't, this is exactly what happens to me, it's just like.
Oh, we're having fun now.
Just to get tired.
It did not work.
Yep, no.
Can you hear me now? There we go. Music. Okay, so we had a new text.
There you go.
Perfect.
Um,
Describes our class today.
And we want to save it. It's going to ask for the file name, maybe. And we're just going to call it.
Is it using Intel Optane memory? Intel Optane.
No. All right, anyway, so that's done. So if I go back here now, to LS, I now have, the test 2 I just made.
Yeah.
Yes, it was. So I have a new file, it's called test2, and I can do a lot of things with the grep command.
What does graph mean?
Global regular expression.
Vertigo?
Vertigo.
Huh?
Vertigo?
Vertigo? No, protocol.
No,
Process.
E and X is just expression.
Vertigo with a silent P at the beginning.
I'm lost.
Brian got it, that's okay.
So here we go, we've got a bunch of, and when they do these searches, it goes line by line. So you're going to search one line at a time. And the first one, so if I search for season, it's going to return the first line, not just the word season. It's got to be restricted to that. So that's pretty cool. Yeah. You know, if I do that, and again, I got to do test. Yes. Okay. Yes.
Test 2 text.
Yeah, I need to know what the test, no, test 2.
Test 2, right? I know, it's like really hard to see. This is at the moment, right?
But if I want to get into more complex queries, grep can only do the simple queries. They have an egrep, which is extended grep, and that allows me to do more complex searches, like, I gotta see what it looks like again, because I forget. So maybe I'm going to do egrep. And I'm going to do the quote, and then do season or, and the vertical line is an or, rest, close, test 2.
And you use the parentheses that had 2 things to look for?
Yes. So when it's asking for whatever is the result of inside that which is important. And I hit that, and it's going to give you 2 lines this time, because either one of those made it a true statement.
So would you be able to like search things for a whole network using the egrep?
Well, you've got to have access to it. By a whole network, give me an.
So like if I went on as the like for admin, and I wanted to see say like an employee lost a certain like financial document. I needed help finding. Would I be able to go onto the network itself?
Right. So if here's the root directory, and then you're going to have out of here, you have any Amanda, and 1,000 other people. If you know the name of the file you're looking for, from the root directory, you could do a grep search, to find that, or a bind search for the file name, and it will recursively I can't remember, you'd have to look up for each particular one, whether or not there's a, hyphen R or a hyphen R to make it recursive throughout the whole thing. And I know it's hard to see here, because in this particular case, it already knows what folder and file it's looking at, so it doesn't give you the name of where it is. But if you're searching,
You have to have a file then.
well, for grep and egrep you do. For find you don't, so you're looking for something different with find than you would be with.
File would be like numbers or like words.
So if you're looking for a particular file that has particular text in it, you don't know the file name, I think you're going to be looking for string. That one I'll have to look up. I mean, I know you can do it, and I'm drawing a blank. Anybody know off the top of their head? But the answer is you can. You could do it both by file name and by what's inside of it. Or if you're, think about it, it's also how they do virus scans. They'll have a database of virus scans or segments of code that exist within a file that trigger viruses in the future. So in your root directory, you'll have a program like Norton or whatever that literally reaches out when you do one of those scans and looks for all of those individual components that would identify a file as being compromised. And so you can do that, but you need to have a super user level that would bring you all the way back to the root. Or a root, because each of these levels give permissions for that particular level. So you might have a root here that's, Bob, I own the entire network. And then, all of these people are accounting. And so there's an accounting root level that's like a second in. And somebody might have a super user for that and beyond. So they'd be able to search within their directory, but not out into, maintenance, or something like that. You do have multi-level super user permission kind of stuff that you can do. And you can actually do it better in Linux or in Windows Server. Windows Server follows a very similar file and permission structure. Back when Windows NT came out, which was kind of what they were basing some of their Windows servers on, was an NTSF file service, which was a much more restricted and user protective. In a Windows 95 or something, you either had permission to the whole machine or you didn't. So it's impossible for people to get set a file with a middle, lower, higher level of protections. And with the NTFS and the Linux file systems, you can do that file by file, directory by directory. So it's a little more complete. Unix can do it too. I don't know about Mac. I just don't have any information on how they do their stuff. But I think there's a little gnome in there that just decides.
Magical gnome.
Yeah.
GNOM.
It's bad. Bad joke.
So what is the
Bad
joke?
joke, okay?
So what is the joke? Linux joke.
Well,
I know you know.
Good old bad.
It's at least one.
But Linux is the best OS, okay?
It has its features.
As long as you can't run
Puppy
it
Linux
yourself.
is the best OS.
Once you use it,
It's the word puppy in the title. Puppy Linux is the best one. That's what the cloud runs on.
The puppy. All right. You got questions? Hang around. Yes.
I got one question. I tried typing in man-k with grep, and it says bus error core is that. I feel that's really bad, but it's in a VM, so.
That does not sound good.
All right, so, sorry.
Sounds good.
So you were trying to do what? A man for grep?
Yeah.
But what was the, what was the other variable you were putting in? Height and K. So yeah, what does that one do?
No, apparently crashes your computer.
Well, I know.
Everyone stands for crash.
I'm just,
Yeah.
so that is, okay, well, so that's to search by keyword. And then you were, and for grep, right?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I get it. So when you do this, it's going to look through all of the manuals and find the ones that have grep in it. Nothing appropriate.
Oh, whoa.
Wait, you see that? But that's the silly thing is it should have popped up with, you know, this has it in it. So there should have been at least one response that says the grep manual has the word grep in it.
Get a grab appropriate.
Get a grep.
According to the.
Or get an egress.
Oh, wow, yeah.
Does this building have proper egress? I don't know. Jokes like that, everybody will do it.
What's our homework?
Yeah, like stupid jokes. I want to know what my assignment is.
Yeah.
So I can take my life.
All right, so where are you supposed to be by Thursday? Or, no,
We're supposed
5?
to be in 5 today.
5?
We're supposed to be
All right.
in 5 today.
Okay. So Thursday, you need to be caught up with today. How's that?
Sounds perfect.
So which one do we need to have?
3 to 5, like
12.
All of them. Already finished.
Wow.
So we're supposed to have 5 done today, 5 by 5. 5. Come on, poor crap.
Hey,
I know, it's like.
I trust you.
No, and syllabus 5. 11.
Yeah,
Well, keep working at it. You're gonna have tomorrow on it. Smell and all that.
Yeah. I broke it with him and I lost it.
Yes, Mr. Wong.
Their servers.
I think about, no, every week I was breaking.
So me, how old was I? Oh, that's right.
Billy and I were.
I know, but
And then I remember when you put the freaking
TV screen.
What's the word now?
What was the bits?
Oh, you
No,
have
no, I played.
freaking like, I'm not over there doing Italians.
Yes.
Yeah,
But maybe that's
exactly.
what I-
It's not our control.
I don't do it. I don't know if I guess.
Sorry.
Which one does it go
Yeah.
meeting? Do you want to?
Okay, all right. I didn't